Hello, welcome to my channel, and welcome to part 2 of my series on Robert Durst. In case you missed part 1, let me recap really quick. So, Robert Durst is this rich old man from New York. His wife, Kathleen, went missing in the 80s. He dismembered his best friend, Morris Black, in 2001, but pleaded self-defense and was shockingly found not guilty.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Robert Durst, not guilty.
Not guilty.
His other best friend, Susan Berman, was shot in the head and found dead. Durst could not be linked to Susan Berman's murder right away until he agreed to do a documentary, The Jinx, for HBO. In the series finale, he was confronted with evidence that implicated him in Susan Berman's murder, and this is what happened.
In Sunday's finale, Durst was confronted with an old handwritten letter that matched an envelope police received on the day of Berman's murder, which warned of a cadaver at her home, used block lettering, and misspelled Beverly Hills. After being confronted with the new evidence, Durst took a trip to the bathroom and, apparently oblivious to the fact that he was still wired, said this.
There it is. You're caught. What the hell are you doing? Kill them all. Of course.
Alright, and so that is where we left off. So anyways, after that aired, the LAPD immediately issued a warrant for Robert Durst's arrest. The filmmakers of The Jinx claimed that they gave the evidence to the police 2 years before this documentary even came out. So Durst was on the run. Police eventually did track him down in New Orleans though, where he was found in a hotel acting like Robert Durst.
Eventually tracked him to the J.W. Marriott Hotel in New Orleans.
So now 2 FBI agents show up at the hotel and they're talking to the clerk. Well, do you have anyone booked here under the name of Dorothy Signer? No. They go through 10 other aliases. No. Dan, where is he? They turn around and there's Bob walking in the lobby headed for the elevators.
Later, they accompanied him to his room.
And ultimately they turn up cash, a gun, and some pot.
So Bob Durst was booked for possession of a handgun and marijuana in Louisiana, and also arrested for the murder of Susan Berman in Los Angeles. And the very next day, the final episode of The Jinx aired, featuring the now infamous off-camera bathroom... What was it? A confession?
Fun fact, Durst claims he smoked pot every day of his life. Look, we're already finding common ground.
Smoke weed every day.
So anyway, after the confession aired and Durst was arrested, police in all of the towns where Durst had lived over the years reopened some of their missing persons cases because it was obvious that this guy was a serial killer and they wanted to see if he could be linked to anything.
In 1997, a pretty teenager named Karen Mitchell was helping out at her Aunt Annie Casper's shoe store.
I did not ever meet Robert Durst, but my manager, she said she remembered him because he just dressed as a woman.
Karen might well have met Robert Durst, said Aunt Annie. She often helped Eureka's homeless population, people among whom Bob was known to mingle. We can't know for sure, but we do know she was in Bob's neighborhood more than once.
Karen used to go to Trinidad on the bus. I mean, they could have met. It's definitely a possibility.
She liked unusual people. She liked to pick their brain and talk to them.
The day she vanished, Karen left the shoe store to walk to her job at a nearby daycare center, where she'd arranged to have Annie pick her up after work.
And as I came down, I had this weird feeling like something was off.
It was. Karen never made it to work. Her mother, Mary Casper, lived in Los Angeles. No forgetting what that phone call was like.
We drove from Southern California up here, and I remember hanging flyers at the rest stops of my daughter and just being like, this is not happening right now. How could this be? Karen, where are you?
A massive search produced no sign of her, though there was one curious lead. A witness who said he saw a young woman get into a car with an older man on this busy Eureka road. The witness worked with a police artist to produce this, but nothing much came of it, at least not back then. Years passed, and then Matt Birkbeck, who authored a book on Durst called A Deadly Secret, got a tip from some independent investigators also working the case, a possible connection.
There were credit card records that placed Durst in the Eureka area the day that this girl disappeared.
The transaction was just up the coast in Trinidad, maybe 20 minutes or so by car from that spot where the witness saw a girl picked up on the road in Eureka. And then, before the trial in Galveston, Birkbeck heard this.
I have a really good source that was close to the defense team, and I was told that Durst, he was extremely concerned about Karen Mitchell, and was so concerned he thought he was going to get charged.
Durst brought this up on his own with his defense attorney?
Yes, and Dick DeGuerin apparently said to him, Bobby, let's worry about one case at a time.
So besides Karen Mitchell, police also looked into Durst as far as two other missing teenage girls. Kristen Matafari of San Francisco and Lynn Schultz up in Vermont. The FBI even got involved at one point to see if they could link Durst to the infamous Long Island serial murders, because those victims were dismembered in the same way that Durst dismembered Morris Black. So besides people, Durst also apparently killed animals.
You testified at Durst's parole hearing, and it wasn't long after that that you found a dismembered cat on your doorstep. Why do you think Durst was involved with that?
When I came home and I drove up, I saw something right at the foot of my sidewalk. And at first I thought it was a dead rat. And as I got out of my car and focused on it, I realized it was a severed cat head with the front two legs attached. And I thought, oh my God, what in the world is that? Is that really what I think it is? And as I'm trying to process this, it dawns on me that this is a severed head. And this was done perfectly. It was clean. This was a hot June 29th day in Texas, which is very, very hot. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a drop of blood. There wasn't a body fluid. There wasn't a hair out of place. And it was laid there perfectly with the front two paws crossed. It was placed there very, 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 very carefully. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, oh my God, what is this? And it hit me, oh my God, this is a severed head. And I knew that he'd had a history of destroying animals and cutting up animals and doing horrible things to them. Mm. And I thought back to that moment when he was in my chambers and he was looking at all of my pictures when he was angry about me not allowing a cartoon in for their defense. And I ran into my house thinking, oh God, please let my dogs be okay. And they were fine. But it was the fact that it hit me that it was a severed head.
And when you, the part of the reason you linked this to him was, of course, you had testified at that parole hearing, you had been the judge in the case. But you mentioned other things he'd done to animals. His family has raised questions about this, and I'll note it's his family. We don't know if, none of this has been fully substantiated, but according to his brother, he had dogs. They were all Alaskan Malamutes, all named Igor. All of them mysteriously disappeared, one after the other, all of these dogs. So do you believe this story? What do you think happened to those dogs?
Well, actually, I didn't hear them from the Durst family. I'd heard it from several people, including Jim McCormick, Kathy's brother. And during the trial, there was a photograph introduced that was found on Bob when he was arrested in Pennsylvania that had him and Kathy in it and had the dog in it. And the dog's name was Igor. Well, then later when he was talking in the tapes that I listened to, he was talking about another dog that he'd had more recently named Igor, Well, I thought that dog can't be 20 years old. And so later I was told by Jim that he had a succession of dogs, and every one of them was named Igor, and every one of them died an unnatural, mysterious death.
And there was a moment on those tapes where you think he used the word Igor to refer to a human being, or what he wanted to do to a human being?
Yes, I do. There was a time when he was talking to his wife, Deborah, about going to his brother's house when he was on the run. And he stood in the driveway, and there was some sort of a social event going on, and he told his wife that he thought about doing an Igor to his brother. And his wife stopped and said, "Stop, stop, stop. This is a recorded line, Bob."
That literally makes me sick to my stomach. Anyway, after Durst was arrested, he sat down and voluntarily talked to police for over 2 hours without a lawyer present. During that interrogation, which you can find on YouTube, by the way, he said, among other things, that he was high on meth during the entire filming of the Jinx. He talked about dismembering a body, and when investigators asked him if he would be honest and tell them if he killed his wife, Morris Black, or Susan Berman, he was pretty honest and said no, he wouldn't tell them if he did to all three of them. So it's been 3 years since this arrest, and pretrial motions finally started this spring.
A witness who claims real estate millionaire Robert Durst confessed to killing his wife is going back on the stand today. Durst faces first-degree murder charges in the execution-style shooting of his friend Susan Berman in Los Angeles in 2000. Prosecutors say he killed her because she knew too much about the disappearance of his wife, Kathleen. She vanished in 1982. Durst is not facing charges in that case, which remains unsolved. He has pleaded not guilty to killing Susan Berman. Jonathan Hunt is live in L.A., and this is a mystery. When you talk to people from L.A., they know all the details in this case.
Yep, they certainly do, Harris. It's captured the imagination, and obviously this has been very dramatic testimony this week. The witness is Nick Chavin. He was a very good friend of Robert Durst's, a very good friend of Durst's wife, Kathleen, and a very good friend of Susan Berman. And he says that at a dinner back in 2014, he was with Robert Durst, and Durst told him directly he did indeed kill his friend Susan Berman. Chavin said on the stand that Durst told him, quote, "I had to. It was her or me. I had no choice." And he went on, "This is a best friend who admitted to killing my other best friend." Chavin also bolstered the prosecution claim that Durst killed Berman because she knew too much about the disappearance of his wife, Kathy. Chavin related a conversation he had with Berman. Quote, "She said, 'Bob killed Kathy.' I asked, 'How do you know that?' She said, 'He told me.'" Our sources, Harris, told us before this all started it was going to be sensational. It has proven to be exactly that this week, Harris.
So why was the identity, Jonathan, of this witness kept secret for so long?
Well, quite simply, Harris, because the witness, Nick Chavin, and prosecutors believed that his life was in danger, that Robert Durst might have him killed. Listen to prosecutor John Lewin here.
That man kills witnesses. That's what he does. So if there's any doubt, if there's any question as to what our theory is, it's that Mr. Durst, when pushed into a corner, he murders people.
And worth noting, Harris, that Nick Chavin came into court with 2 armed bodyguards who we understand are with him 24 hours a day since his identity was made public.
So it's worth noting that Robert Durst has esophageal cancer, among many other health problems, and his life expectancy is only 3 years at this point. So a lot of people have a theory that they are trying to just drag this out and let him die in prison. People are hoping that he'll give some kind of deathbed confession and the families will finally get closure and know where the bodies are and stuff like that, but this guy is a psychopath and that's never gonna happen. If this does go to trial, I think there's a good chance he'll get acquitted. I certainly hope not, because then he might kill me. I'm not kidding. So, if anything happens to me,
That if anything ever happened, look to Bob. Bob did it. Don't let him get away with it.
anyway, that concludes my twisted case of Robert Durst. I want to know your theories about him killing other people, about what's going to happen as far as his life and the trial, in the comments below. These videos get a lot of views and likes, but people don't really comment, and I'd like to get a discussion going. So please do comment, and yes, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I'm a sociopath. It's a real killer on a warpath.